Welcome to Architect's Perspective of Residential House Wrap. I'm a senior staff architect, Rand Sellner of the Home Architects, and here's some information about my background. Let me tell you a story. Once there was a new unlicensed builder named Fred Lumpkin. Fred and his brothers and father had been building chicken coops out of used 2x4s and 10-penny nails in the back country of Alabama where there was no official building department. Fred decided to start building houses for people because his methods did not involve such unnecessary things as engineers, architects, and building codes, or so he explained to his new customers, Jack and Mary Jones. Now, Jones believed that they could get their new dream home built for $100 a square foot, despite the best licensed contractors in the region telling them it would be more like $300 per heated square foot if they wanted a few nice features and maybe around $200 per heated square foot for lower end materials and features. No, shrieked Jack and Mary, all we have is $100 per square foot to build our dream house. And so Fred the builder said he could and would do it, and he did. He was friends with Bubba, the man who ran the local landfill, and so had access to lots of materials other people threw away. And about 3 weeks after Jack and Mary Jones moved into the new house, they noticed unpleasant smells and water stains on the drywall and bugs running around. So they called Fred the builder to fix this. Okay, so Fred the builder drives up on his dilapidated pickup truck with so many colors of paint and tacked on replacement parts that no one can even tell what make the truck was. He walks up to the house, his pride and joy, wondering what problems the Joneses have dreamed up for him this time. They let him in and guide him to the dining room where they point to the wall. Fred notices this wall is the inside of an exterior wall. He sees the water stain on the drywall, which is now a wet wall. He touches it, then pulls out a box knife and cuts out a piece of the wallboard about 16 inches square, then looks at the inside of his wall. He sees the unfaced fiberglass insulation and the sides of the studs on each side. He touches these things and notices they are damp, as is the rear of the wallboard. He then walks outside, stumbles over a lawn sprinkler, then cuts a section of wood siding out in the appropriate location of the interior cut, and notices his bare unfaced OSB wall sheathing, which is wet, and notices all the holes in it from the nails he used to install the siding. He shakes his head, then looks down at the sprinkler he stumbled over. With a goofy grin, he picks up the sprinkler and moves it about 20 feet away from the wall. He nails the siding back on the wall. He then marches back inside the house, nails up the piece of drywall, and hangs a frame picture over it that announces to Jack and Mary Jones, "All fixed." The Joneses smile, proud to have been such savvy clients, saving so much money, and to have such a brilliant builder. Fred the builder hops in his strange truck and after 3 attempts gets the engine to finally start, then drives. Question: are Jack and Mary Jones going to be calling Fred the builder back for other repairs? What items were missing in the builder's wall? What's this convention all about? House wrap. Now let's get down to business. Codes adopted by USA states for houses. It's the IRC, International Residential Code. It's the go-by codebook for states for home design and construction. States adopt the IRC in whole or in part, often issuing a state version of the IRC. States adopt nearly 98% identical to the original IRC. There's minimal state amendments typically, and they issue a state version a couple of years after each new IRC version. IRC section R703.2, water resistant barrier, my firm and others often abbreviate this as WRB, says 1 layer number 15-pound asphaltic felt free from holes and breaks complying with ASTM D226 for type 1 felt or other approved water resistant barrier shall be applied over studs or sheathing of all exterior walls. It's that or other approved water resistant barrier part that's created the house wrap products at this convention. Manufacturers have testing of their own to convince local authorities and me and other architects like me that their products meet or exceed the IRC WRB code requirement for asphaltic felt. IRC section R703.1.1, water resistance, indicates that the exterior wall envelope shall be designed and constructed in a manner that prevents the accumulation of water within the assembly. By providing a water-resistant barrier behind the exterior veneer as required by section 703.2 and a means of draining to the exterior water that enters the assembly. Let's look at the perm ratings of various house wraps. 15-pound asphaltic felt is 5 to 7 perms until the relative humidity is increased to 75%, at which point the felt is 15 perms. Building science appears to prefer this perm rating zone. Tyvek by DuPont is about 56 perms. Hydrogap by Benjamin Obdyke is around 16 perms, which is pretty close to asphaltic. What's the functionality of the various perm ratings? Less than 0.1 perm equals waterproof, vapor impermeable, vapor is not getting through. 0.1 to 1.0 perms equals semi-permeable to vapor. 1 to 10 perms is semi-permeable to vapor. And over 10 perms is vapor permeable. What is HouseWrap supposed to do? It's mainly to resist water. It needs to function as a water-resistant barrier. Second function, and not stated in the code under WRBs, is possibly allow water vapor to pass through. Ideally, water vapor inside exterior walls would vent to the outside, rather than water vapor outside migrating to the inside wall. But there's no way to make it one way. The third function would be air barrier. What an architect wants from a house wrap: 1, to keep out all liquid bulk water. 2, if possible, allow water vapor trapped inside the exterior walls to evaporate through to the outside. 3, if possible, function as an air barrier. What an architect will settle for, it absolutely, positively has to keep out liquid bulk water, both windblown and gravity dripping. Water vapor inside the exterior walls can evaporate to the inside of the house once the exterior is watertight, if the system doesn't allow venting to the exterior. Third, it would be nice if it could function as an air barrier. This is what most home buyers know about house wrap. House what? Nothing. They don't know what it is. They have no idea. This is what most home buyers are thinking about. The great new view from their house. This happens to be my new house in North Carolina. It was just built in 2018 and 2019. That's the outside of it. They're thinking about the new elevator. They're thinking about the wonderful rec room. This is another project of mine. They're thinking about the wonderful wheelchair accessible shower, another project of mine. And they're thinking of the wonderful bedroom, the home office. This is another project of mine in Sevierville, Tennessee. They're thinking of the great outside recreational areas and fire pit. This is a project of mine in Alabama. They're thinking of the great fireplace, and this is another house of mine in North Carolina. They're thinking of the wonderful new entryway, the space planning. That's the inside of the house. Thinking of the great view. The people paying for the house are not thinking about house wrap. That's why nerds like us have to make good decisions for them. And that's why we attend conventions like this, and we make presentations like this, and we design those homes and make products for those homes. It's up to you, because the people paying for it don't know what it is and care until there's a problem. With that in mind, let's consider some WRB water-resistant options. This is a non-house wrap solution, but it is in fact a WRB. It keeps out water and most water vapor. A, it has an exterior drainable finish. B, continuous foil-covered foil tape, polyiso continuous thermal wall sheathing. C, continuous structural wall sheathing under that as a nail base. And D, stud wall framing, foam insulation, and drywall. If your wall finish has built-in drainage features, such as vertically corrugated metal wall siding, like you can see here, it's another way to drain water that may enter the wall system through the wall finish. Not using HouseWrap means the WRB must be taped properly. Question: where does water trapped in the stud wall and structural wall sheathing go after the exterior is dried in? Answer: it vents where it can, which is primarily to the interior and up. Question: do not install foamed in place wall insulation until most of the water in the studs and sheathing have dried. This is the interior of my house under construction. Well, now here's a wall assembly using HouseWrap. A, exterior wall finish. B, HouseWrap with 1 millimeter drainage. C, continuous structural wall sheathing as a nail base. And D, stud wall framing, foam or bad insulation, and drywall. This is a perfectly acceptable system. Let's compare some HouseWrap types. Not all of them, but just a couple. HouseWrap with 1 millimeter non-compressible drainage feature versus HouseWrap without drainage. Question: are thin HouseWraps with deformations that compress to less than 1 millimeter when assembling the wall as drainable as we'd like them to be? Flat HouseWraps have a much harder time draining water. Now here's an example.
As you can see, with its 1 millimeter,
the blue beakers full of water pour through these assemblies, and as you can see, the one on the right side drain with the 1 millimeter offset drains almost immediately, whereas the one on the left with no deformations has a very hard time draining. This test visually indicates that having at least a 1 millimeter non-compressible gap on the surface of the WRB greatly aids in draining the bulk water from behind the wall finish. Important WRB detail: tape. If you're using HouseWrap with generous overlaps, then you may not need tape at all, so you might be okay, but you will if you want it to act as an air barrier. If you're using a WRB that doesn't have overlaps, then you are going to need tape. And we're not talking about duct tape. One of my personal residences was being built back in 2004 in North Carolina, and we were using the code standard 15-pound asphaltic felt as the WRB. I noticed some of the workers using duct tape to seal the WRB joints around the windows. What do you suppose happened? Within 24 hours, all the duct tape had peeled off, laying on the deck floor around the house. Why did that happen? Because the felt had a petrol-based coating, asphalt, and the duct tape adhesive wasn't created to bond to that material. What do? Well, as it turns out, W.R. Grace makes a special WRB flashing tape made to chemically bond to asphaltic surfaces. It's called Vicor. That solved the problem. Moral of the story: do your research. Make sure the tapes you specify are chemically compatible with the WRB you are using. My latest house uses an aluminum foil layer bonded to polyisocyanurate foam as the WRB. And if anybody can say polyisocyanurate 3 times in less than a second, I may give you $1. During this actual presentation, 2 laboratory scientists were able to do it, so I gave them each $1. What might be a good tape to use on foil and to bond to OSB? We use foil tape over the vertical joints of the foil-covered polyiso board. Zip tape for through-board horizontal Z-flashing joints that ensured even if the tape adhesive ever released, the Z-flashing shape would forever be behind, through, and over the top of each course of insulation board once the veneer went on. Both tapes have acrylic adhesive which performed well. Building science research appears to confirm that acrylic tapes perform better than modified asphalts and butyl-taped adhesives. Of course, this does depend on the substrate to which you are adhering the tape. WRB in this project was exposed for over 4 months in the harsh North Carolina winter. Tapes used remain bonded, exposed to wind, rain, ice, and snow. After living in it for actually 9 months now, no leaks have been noticed. We get 100 to 200 inches of rain or snow a year in our alpine rainforest ecology. With the above being said, guess what? You're still going to need tape to seal joints and house wrap at door and window and other openings. Good news, most manufacturers of house wrap offer chemically compatible tapes to use. Word to the wise number 1, install tapes thinking the adhesive will fail some decade. Then you install the tape and house wrap and WRB and veneers so that the tape will remain in place from the pressure of the screws, nails, and the geometry in which you installed it. Word to the wise number 2, don't cheap out using duct tape or some other tape not specifically formulated to bond to the house wrap and WRB you are using. Only use the house wrap WRB manufacturer's recommended tapes. My firm is not a fan of tape joints subjected to uphill overlaps. If water running downhill tests the tape adhesion during rains, that is not a good arrangement. My firm does not do that. Why? Because if water does manage to get into such uphill joints, wood can get water into the joints and rot and fail. When was the last time you saw a perfectly constructed home? Our experience has been never, even my own. There must be built-in forgiveness in the specs and details due to the imperfections that always occur during installation. Opening corners. Door and window opening corners are sources for leaks in house wrap and WRBs. Any YouTube for any house wrap will show manufacturer's sales rep perfectly installing their flashing tape. That's because he's had hundreds of times to perfect his technique and be able to stop and start the camera. Reality check. Many of the people installing your flashing tapes may not even speak English. This doesn't mean they are not intelligent and hardworking people. They probably are. But anything you can do to simplify opening corner flashing will be a benefit to the watertightness of your residential. Preformed flexible corners can help. That's the green vinyl L's you see above. They're used at window and door sill openings. These happen to be made from WR Grace. They supplement flashing tape you're already using around these openings. They work very well on my house. As long as tape adheres to the one-piece corners and the house wrap WRB, it's nearly impossible for the window and door openings to leak. As long as your workers didn't do something silly somewhere else in the installation. Conclusions about house wrap types. With house wrap as part of the wall system, use drainage standoff of at least 1 millimeter. This happens to be another system. This is called Rain Slicker by Benjamin Obdyke. It's a great system, but it has about a 3/16 inch thickness. If you're using more than 1 millimeter or more than 1/16, install insect screen at the bottom and the top of drainage plane edges to keep bugs out, and they will tell you that. With construction as expensive as it is, it makes the most sense to simplify construction systems where you can. A 1/16 inch grid screen is the standard screening in the USA to keep out bugs. Any larger and you will be inviting pests into the wall system, and you don't want that. If you can get everything you need from a WRB or house wrap in terms of characteristics such as 1/16 inch or less drainage gap, but at least 1 millimeter, you're going to save money and time by simplifying systems. Some builders use 3/4 inch thick 1x2s as furring drainage gap inside walls behind the veneer and over the WRB. It seems to make sense. Let's just nail up some 1x2s. Except you have to use insect screening or pests will make homes in those generous gaps. That's 3/4 of an inch. Bats can get in there, birds, certainly cockroaches, termites, and all kinds of creepy crawlies. So you have to screen it. All that furring, screening costs time, materials, and money. If you can get all those benefits in one easy-to-handle material, that makes even more sense. If you're using HouseWrap as part of your wall system, it probably makes the most sense to have its perm rating also be as close to that of 15-pound asphaltic felt, which IRC code specifically mentions, and which building scientists appear to prefer due to A, its ability to shed bulk water, B, its ability to off-gas water vapor, sometimes toward the exterior, which is great. Remember what home buyers think of HouseWrap. Huh? House what? Only people like you and me can make effective decisions for our clients and the people who buy the homes we design and specify, because there are many options as to how we design and build homes. Like Fred, the unlicensed builder, and Bubba, or like you and me. This has been the Architect's Perspective of Residential HouseWrap by the Home Architects.